A team of researchers has just announced a groundbreaking discovery beneath Egypt's Giza plateau, a vast complex of underground chambers, shafts extending nearly 2 kilometers under the famous pyramids. Italian Scottish researchers claim they discovered a vast underground city under the pyramids. It's an unbelievable story using synthetic aperture radar. So, and why now? Like, how they just discovered this now? Really? Jason Shurka is the host of the Pyramid Code on Unified TV, who's been watching this very closely and, of course, has a lot of thoughts about this. So we invited Jason here on the show to talk about this and have a conversation. Jason, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. So when you heard this news, over the past few days, when the Italian video was released and you have to go through the subtitles and sort of unpack all of this, and I saw it on X, I said, I'm sorry, hold on a second. There's a massive underground city underneath Giza that's 3 kilometers deep, hundreds and hundreds of meters wide. Like, what? What did you think when you heard this?
So what I'd like to do is actually break down a few facts for everybody, because everybody's hearing this news from a bunch of different sources. Some is true, some isn't. Nobody really knows what to think. But what I thought when I first saw it was, thank God, finally somebody is speaking about this, because what you're hearing now is nothing new. As a matter of fact, the study, or so-called the research that these Italian researchers did, their names are Corrado Malanga, I believe, and Filippo Biondi. They're both researchers in the radar and remote sensing research aspect of things. And they actually published a peer-reviewed study and their research in an article titled Synthetic Aperture Radar Doppler Tomography Reveals Details of Undiscovered High-Resolution Internal Structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But guess when that was actually put out? It wasn't a few days ago. That research was put out in 2022. So my question, number one, why are we speaking about it now if it came out in 2022?
Right. Well, that is a great question. Do you have an answer as to why we're just learning about this now? I mean, and I know you have documented a lot of this going back years. And in fact, there's recorded information going back to, I mean, wherever you come down on this, I don't know. But Billy Meyer and his contactee publications in 1953, and this is verifiable, by the way. This is copyrighted, verifiable information of Billy Meyer specifically talking about going underneath, being transported in a beam ship and going underneath the pyramids in a massive underground chamber. Now, you might laugh at it, but it was published in 1953. I mean, so why are we learning about this now, Jason?
So I'll cover both sides. I'll cover the factual side, and I'll cover the side that some people may call weird, but it's important to note because there are coincidences, and then there are things that just can't be coincidence. So factually, what happened over here is it's called SAR data, synthetic aperture radar data. Along with that came this proprietary software that was created by one of those researchers, the Italian researchers. And the way that it works is it transforms the radar signals that they're detecting into something called photonic information. Now, the simple way of explaining that is it tracks vibrations down to the millimeter to identify underground structures without excavation. So it's a very non-invasive way of being able to figure out what's deep below us. Now, this research was done on the second largest pyramid of the Giza Plateau. It's known as the Khafre Pyramid. What they found was 5 identical structures inside the pyramid itself. But what was even more interesting than that is underneath those 5 identical structures were these 8 massive, they look like cylinders. Nobody really knows what they are. They found that they were hollow inside, and they're surrounded by what looks like a coil. Some people are saying that the radar seems to show that there's stairs bringing you down. And on the bottom of those cylinders, which by the way are 648 meters each, that's massive, let alone to put something underground 4,000 years ago whenever that happened. On the bottom of those cylinders, you have 2 very large cubic structures that seem to be some sort of basement, like what you were just talking about that guy spoke about in 1953. Now, each cubic basement, I call them basements, nobody knows what they are, measure about 80 meters on each side. That's about almost a football field in terms of each side of that cube. These are massive, massive structures underground. And the entire structure extends about, not exactly, but about 2 kilometers beneath the surface of all 3 pyramids of the Giza plateau. Now, they're telling us that, and this is at least what the textbooks tell us, how I grew up in school. The pyramids were tombs for these pharaohs that they wanted to honor. And they built them using ramps and sledges and hammers. Now, this just blows that theory and that history out of the water, because you don't build what we just spoke about with ramps and sledges and hammers. There's something else going on. But my question that we have to ask, and then we can go into the weird part, factually,
as if that's not weird enough.
The proportions of the structure itself have certain mathematical constants built into them, like pi, 3.14, the golden ratio, and the most interesting one to me, modern science calls it a coincidence. I don't buy it. The speed of light. Now, how do we get the speed of light? The latitude line that the Great Pyramid is sitting on is 29.9792458 degrees. And if you just move that decimal by 2, you're going to get 299,792,458. And what that number is in meters per second is the speed of light. Now, call that a coincidence? I don't think it's a coincidence. They knew something, and we don't understand how they knew it. But somebody's just saying they placed it to this degree, 6, 7 decimal points after the zero, to the exact point of the speed of light in meters per second. They knew something that we don't understand today.
That's wild.
Now, there's some texts, and I think you shared them with our team earlier, where I think, and this was published in the Pyramid Code. So the pharaohs brought with them a different form of technology called electromagnetic pulsation. And this technology gave them the ability to build massive pyramids. Underneath these massive structures are very large basements that house the tools and technology used to make them. So, to my knowledge, no one has found these basements under the pyramids, according to the text that you provided. So this was published. This was published back years ago, that we were being told that they built these massive basements there. So we have the documentation of this.
So what you're reading from is a document called the Pyramid Code. It's not something that I wrote. It's something that I was given back in July or August of 2020. The person who wrote it likes kind of remaining behind the scenes. He doesn't like being in the spotlight. He gave it to me, and he said you could share it with the world. So that's what I did. And everybody called me crazy. They said, Jason, they're pyramids, they're tombs. Leave it alone. They built it with water and hammers and sledges, and that's about it. And it turns out that when this document that came out on September 9th of 2020, free for the world on my website, it says exactly that. It says that this technology gave them the ability to build massive pyramids. And it specifically says, as you said, and I quote from the document, and I'm reading it right in front of me, underneath these massive structures are very large basements that house the tools and technology used to make them. Now, this is a 44-page document. There's a lot of information that goes into what some may call the non-factual side of things. But when you kind of connect the dots, a lot of this makes sense. There's all these theories of, did humans build them? Was it really slaves, or were they extraterrestrial? All I know is we can barely build something like that today with the technology that we have. So there had to be some form of intervention back then. And we don't even need to go into textbooks. Look at the writing on the wall, literally in the pyramid. Look at the hieroglyphics on the wall. They tell us the story. There are literal carvings on the wall showing us pictures from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago that they carved, basically telling us that they had other forms of technology that are in many cases foreign to us today. And all you have to do is ask yourself, how do you pick up a stone, not to mention many stones, that our modern day technology and cranes can't pick up today? And if we connect the dots and use some logic, when you use sound, and there are certain universities that have done this, using sound waves to move very, very heavy objects without touching them, it's all a matter of frequency. You use the right frequency, you can break a glass. You use
and
the
isn't there
frequency to move things.
Isn't there imagery of this in the Mayan pyramids as well, using these sound techniques, and almost it looks like magic wands of some of the imagery directing the building of these structures with what looks like a magic wand?
It's very interesting that you brought that up because that's another point of logic that we need to bring up. I like going into the theories and connecting some dots, but I need fact to base that off of. And from what we're told, thousands of years ago, we were not very advanced, as far as they tell us at least. And therefore, we couldn't have really communicated across continents, right? Christopher Columbus only discovered America, a few hundred years ago. But if that were true, please explain to me, and this is a question, not an answer, explain to me, how is it that there are pyramids all over the planet that have, in some cases, the same inscriptions and carvings into the stone of certain objects and stories if we didn't have any interplanetary communication back then? And it begs the question, well, did we? And are they not telling us something? Because if what I'm saying right now is accepted by modern day science and archaeologists around the world, it changes all of our history. It would bring us to the point of saying maybe we were more advanced back then than we are today. And maybe had those advancements today, humanity would be a whole lot more empowered. But if you go to politics, look what we're fighting over. We're fighting over oil. We're fighting over gas. We're fighting over energy. What happens if what the Pyramid Code series and the document says is true? What happens if what Nikola Tesla was saying over 100 years ago was true and free energy is possible? Well, the people that are fighting over natural gas now have a common enemy. It wouldn't just be World War III. It would be World War IV based on what they would be fighting over, because free energy would change the world for the better for humanity. It would destroy the powers that be today.
Right. Oh, it's unbelievable. I kind of come back to just thinking about Billy Meyer again, 1953, telling us what he saw there. And then people just dismiss this out of hand. Traveling there on these beam ships as a contactee case, you can, again, dismiss it if you want. He published it in 1953 and told us about these massive caverns. So where do things stand now with the research on this, Jason? Like, I know there's people that want, obviously, a second opinion, verifiable information. Now that we think that these things are there, these massive cylinders underneath the pyramids that go down, 3 kilometers, where do we stand with the research? Are we going to go and do some sort of excavation, second opinion? Where do things go from here?
I'll give you my opinion on this. I can't share a fact, but my opinion by, again, connecting certain dots and understanding the implications of such a revelation of what is now coming out to the world, because people knew about this for quite some time. I do not believe they're going to let us go down there and excavate. And even if they do, the findings that they find, I personally believe will be hidden or kept secret for a period of time, because what the pyramids were really intended for, if you look at them with their mathematical formulas and what a lot of people even use them for today, is healing. There are a lot of different rooms that create certain frequencies when you're sitting in there, and people till this day go there and have incredible experiences when it comes to healing. That actually inspired everything that we're doing around the world with certain healing technologies. We have a technology right now around the world that's in the shape and direct proportion of the Great Pyramid, called the Light System, specifically created and inspired after the Great Pyramid of Egypt, after the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau. So personally, just my personal opinion, I do not believe that they're going to allow more and more information to come out. But I do believe at some point they will have no choice, because it's just going to be so obvious. To get closer and closer to that truth, people need to start just considering maybe the history that we've been told is different than what we've been told. Maybe we're more powerful than what we've been told. And maybe there are a lot of secrets that when we start looking at them and start really saying maybe our authorities aren't telling us everything, we start finding those truths. Meaning, don't just look for the expert in power to tell you something, because in many cases, the expert in power is paid off by the people that control this world. And if we start going into ourselves and start looking around the world and connecting some dots, we can look at what the experts say and hear what they say. But we also have to use our own logic. And when you have a proper balance between the two, this world will become a much healthier and more conscious place.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, Jason, great to see you. Thank you so much for this. Where can people find out more information with your work on the Pyramid Code?
So the pyramid code, you can actually download the entire document and watch the full series, which is most important because that's a mind-blowing series on Unified TV. It's unifyd.tv right down there below. And if anybody does want to learn more about that technology that actually mimics the shape and direct proportionality of the Great Pyramid, it actually looks just like this. It's pretty awesome. That's called the Light System. And you can find that at thelightsystems.com, in plural, thelightsystems.com.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Great to see you. Really appreciate that.
Thanks,
Jason.
Subscribe.